Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Festival of Enterprise COVID-19 webinar series. I'm David Stevenson, your host, and thank you for joining us. This afternoon rather, even. I'm joined by Lucy Whittington and Rachel Flower from the Broadroom. And the Broadroom is an online mastermind networking group, and they'll be discussing who is buying and are you selling, whether, discussing the sort of merits of offering your proposition as a paid for service or for free, and how potentially you can do both and sort of juggle that balance. So with that, I will hand it over to Rachel and Lucy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, first of all, for joining us this afternoon.
That's okay.
Great, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. This is our third time doing a webinar as part of this Festival of Enterprise, and this session's kind of a nice follow-on to the other topics that we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks. And it's a massive topic, but Lucy and I are really thrilled to be talking about it. Lucy's background is in marketing, and all things around selling is her day-to-day jam. And my background is in law and contracts, so I come at this topic very much from the, what is the right thing to do? What is the legally permitted thing to do? And also what's kind of the ethical, moral, and we're all thinking about the economy at the moment. So what's the financially right thing to do as well? So we're going to be covering like quite a massive topic. We've got loads of things on our list, Luce, haven't we? So to cover through the hour.
So what we're going to try and cover, and obviously if we don't get to it, then these are things we write about a lot on our, we have a Facebook page for the Broadroom and lots of other resources. So we're going to try and cover how consumer trends have changed and some predictions that we can make for maybe the short term and the long term. We're going to look at business to business transactions as well, because not all of us are selling business to consumer. And we're looking at businesses and industries that have found opportunities, and whether that's to give you ideas or an example or highlight maybe a market you can go and work in. We're going to talk about the emotive issue of selling at the moment. Some people worry about whether it's profiteering or whether it's exploiting the situation. And tying into that, we're looking at kind of your positioning and storytelling and what marketing messages you can put out now, because they are under a lot more attention at the moment. And then we talk about the importance of cash flow and how your buying and selling behaviours affects other people. Your responsibility as a business owner as well, not just from an onerous sense, but from what Rachel said, the bigger kind of economic perspective, and just about what's going to happen to the economy and what's likely in terms of recovery, and whether this is like a traditional recession or it's different, and in what ways that might be, and how to act accordingly. And if there's any time left, we'll do a Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, it's just impossible to cover all of those topics, in any detail. So we've done our best to kind of bring them at a summary level. I'm really happy to come back and do another session if we need to deep dive into them. So much to talk about on this topic. I think the most important thing in terms of like setting a scene and stepping back at this time and sort of saying this situation is pretty unprecedented. Many have been talking about the 2008 recession and making comparisons, but actually we think a better comparison or analogy is probably with the aftermath of the Second World War in economic terms, because what we've seen during this pandemic is a third of businesses being forced to close down and virtually no business being left unaffected. Now, some businesses have actually kind of thrived and had increased opportunities during this time, and we're going to dive into those businesses. But the majority of businesses, regardless of your shape, your size, whether you're a small business or even the large corporates, massive impact, and people staying at home. Millions of people sat at home unable to work. It's an incredible situation that we're living through. And as an owner of a small business, and most people on this call today are going to be thinking about it from the perspective of a small business, it's been a time of transition and really chaos, sort of looking at what's the right thing to do, how to make priority decisions, how to make strategic decisions when actually you could have been feeling very anxious. We've seen revenues fall off a cliff. As I say, many businesses forced to close. So the first thing I wanted to say, really, really important, is that the businesses that have automatically benefited, such as an obvious example, the supermarkets, or perhaps looking at transport and delivery and logistics, online sales of certain products have gone through the roof. It's largely been the result of luck. So it wasn't some clever forward planning strategic decision that has allowed those businesses to ride the wave. It's actually about the particular situation that we found ourselves in, and of course the government rules that have been put in place about what businesses are essential at this time and are allowed to trade, which ones have had to close. And we've seen so many business owners kind of feeling high levels of shame or guilt, judging themselves for not having contingency plans, not having a plan B. And the truth is, if your business has been through a rough patch and if you're still in the middle of that, it's largely just due to the circumstances. So we know how important mindset is for business owners, and there'll be plenty to learn in due course as we look back. I'm sure we all wish we had better cash reserves or a better slush fund in our businesses for the future. But the point is, and what we want to really sort of talk about today is many businesses have actually been able to change directions and sort of transition really, really quickly outside of these essential ones. So not food, not medicines, not hand sanitizer or alcohol, apparently badged as essential, seen as essential for many of us, I'm sure. But the point that we're going to talk about now is that it's not necessarily what happened, it's how we respond to it that can really make the difference. So we've seen all these wonderful examples of businesses, essentially people, leaders at the helm, who've been forced to close or had their sales really adversely affected, and then they've stepped up and they've changed and been creative. So when we look at consumer behaviours in particular, there's a lot in there which is about human instinct and how people have reacted in the midst of chaos. So this survival instinct has kicked in, which is why we saw panic buying, stockpiling, the whole toilet roll debacle. And those essential items, those businesses, those industries actually struggled to meet demand in the short term. And then as our consumers moved through that initial shock and panic, we have like our change curve response, they started to look for ways to alleviate boredom and give them more purpose. And we've got people at home looking at hobbies. So we saw some brilliant things happening, didn't we, Luce?
Yeah, so obviously lots of people who, and some businesses that hadn't maybe traditionally sold to consumers have realised they can repackage what they've been doing to businesses and sell it on. So all your home arts and crafts, people who are designers or people that make things, sew things, draw things, been able to, change that to be more the hobby market. The same fitness and exercise as big sales in equipment, but also people moving that sort of training online, I know people who've done everything from yoga through to martial arts training and moved it all online just because that's now their opportunity. Obviously IT equipment, but even not just the equipment, but the training, lots of businesses who offer, the very obvious, how to present on webinars or how to, how to host meetings online. I've seen a lot of people switch their training from in-person speaking to how to represent yourself and communicate when online. So obviously there's homeschooling, there's well-being and nutrition, gardening, garden furniture, lots of gifts and flowers. I was the very proud recipient of a massive box of chocolates sent this week, ordered online, thanks to my mum and dad. Lots of baking, comfort food items, but even not just the items themselves, but again, the training, the chefs and the cooks who do it usually in a restaurant, showing us how to make meals at home and things like that. So there's been such a huge demand, and some of it is down to luck. I mean, I think, we can all give a nod to Disney Plus for some impeccable timing on launching a new on-demand service for, both films for grown-ups with the whole, Star Wars and Marvel, but also, for the kids as well. Obviously not recommending that as a homeschool, but, there's some lessons in some Disney films, she says, hopefully. But it's just, there's just been such a big opportunity for, people who can serve that market or can quickly switch to serve that market.
Definitely. And it's been so inspirational from that point of view. As entrepreneurs, as true business owners, I think we are always looking for challenge and variety in our businesses. We might not know that. And during stable times, we can get stuck in quite a routine. But it's really forced people to think outside of the box and do some bingo checks on how many of these phrases we can move. But it's true, isn't it, Lucy? We have seen people, once they've got through the initial, oh my goodness, I can't trade in the way I normally trade, and the government have forced these measures on me. How can I do things differently? And Mary's just used a great example about a local cafe then delivering cream teas in a box as a beautiful example. I've loved seeing that from business owners. So we've been sitting back. One of my fascinations is then looking at the human behaviour angle of things, and how is that going to change? How is it going to stay the same? What can we expect as business owners, short term, medium term? Because it's all very well to pivot and get creative, but you also want this to be part of a sustainable business plan. Not just a kind of a response, an immediate response to keep your revenue going. That's great, but how can you turn it into something that has longevity? So we've been looking, haven't we, about how that consumerism behaviour is going to be. So we think as the lockdown measures get released, hopefully in the weeks to come, obviously there's going to be an initial upsurge, and we're really looking forward to that. Places will be allowed to reopen, but we do expect that consumers are going to be wary, possibly in the short term, and people might stay in a stay-at-home mindset for a good while, even when the measures are released, because they've got this need for safety and looking for certainty. But they're also going to become very choosy and selective in where they go and how they spend their money. And this is where you, as a small business owner, have to really think hard about your marketing, your positioning, your messaging, to make sure you're capturing, your previous customers, your existing customers, getting that loyalty and that trust back in place, but also thinking about new markets, new customers that are going to be looking for really special experiences and things to buy. We do think that because of the economy, and we'll come on to that in a bit, but we expect people to be spending less in the short term on luxury goods, less on expensive dining out, less on, really expensive clothes and those material things. A beautiful thing for me has been observing how people are really reassessing their priorities and how they live. So many people talking about how they've enjoyed slowing down during the lockdown and trying different things and really thinking about what's important to them. I think we're going to see people really spending their money very carefully and with a kind of a new lens on what's important to them. And when you're thinking about your business, that's really important that you then think about what you really love to sell, not just where you might have been meeting demand in the past, because that's what people wanted, but for you personally as a business owner, putting your passion into your business and letting that come across in the way that you're selling. And people are going to really respond to that. People, having been isolated and perhaps lonely, really crave that human connection, really want, particularly with small businesses, to trade with the people behind the business. And Lucy's going to talk a little bit about storytelling in your marketing. I definitely think we're going to see people carrying on spending online. They're going to really have embraced this education, online learning, and business to business going to be carrying on spending on marketing and advertising, but really wanting to make kind of a guaranteed return on their spend in those areas. So looking at very targeted campaigns. And as I say, this survival instinct is going to continue, I think. People are being very short term with what they're buying and kind of turning off spend, which has more of a longer term impact. Some people are investing, which is interesting if they've got cash to spend and they're savvy and they're buying things, which are perhaps reduced or are going to be things that are going to go up in value in the long term. But this all comes from this primal need that we all have to have more certainty and more safety in our everyday. So be very conscious of that in your own business and how you can connect with customers, both existing and new, to give them that sense of security and trust building in your business. And we've talked about how we want to make sure that when you're introducing new services, that you can actually deliver them properly and still give a great customer service and make your customers happy, because you also don't want to be destroying existing trust and the quality of the service that you produced to date as you try and get new revenue streams into your business. So I think it's a really good point, Lucy, to stop and answer this quite thorny question about, is it okay for me to sell, and how often should I be showing up and selling, and do I need to think about my messaging, this profiteering, exploitative? We've seen it particularly with female business owners, haven't we? Which is kind of about the way that we think more often. It's a very feminine trait to be worrying about how we're perceived. I think all businesses have suffered with it. So, do you want to take that forward? Because I know this is something you feel very strongly about, Luce.
I think because we're so sensitive at the moment to everything, understandably, that every message is under the microscope a lot more. People are, very much reading into everything, looking for other people's responses. And also as business owners, we, a lot of us pay a lot of attention to competitors anyway, but we're very much, what's everyone else doing? What's happening? How do I feel when I see that happening as well? And again, like any situation, you have to think about what your market are thinking about. Like Rachel said, some people are being very bullish and they're just like, no, I'm still investing, I'm carrying on. I can see my way out of this and I'm happy to continue on that basis. And other people are very nervous or very short-term focused at the moment. So it's very important that you know your market more than ever. So, as a marketeer, we always talk about who's your ideal client and, get inside their head and what are their thoughts and what are they thinking about. And now this is even more important. But at the same time, it's also an opportunity to bring some stability or to bring some courage or leadership, or to just say, look, here's how I am, here's what we're doing. And not to be glib about anything and not to gloss over things, but just to say, look, here's where we are and here's what's happening for us, and tell the story of where you are. And if you are going to sell, just explain why. It's just really important that people understand where we're coming from. And I've seen some very honest messages from people who are, we can't access this help, with this set, especially if you're a limited company. And best not to get Rachel onto that rant, but we fall in the gaps, which if you are one, you know that very well. So we now have our opportunity to take out a loan in a more easier way. But apart from that, a lot of us don't have any choice other than to trade out of this. But when we tell the story of that or we explain it, it doesn't come from a place of, panic. It just comes from a reality. And also, if we're still able to help people and we're still able to solve a problem, that still has a value. And I think that's the fundamental message, that as long as you're getting that across in your marketing, it only looks like you're being exploitative if you are not paying attention to what people are saying, what your market's saying and feeling and understanding. But if you know that there's a problem that you can still solve for them, then of course you can go out and offer that. It's just, be very sensitive and sensible in your messaging. Don't pretend it's business as usual if it isn't. It may be, in some cases it's exactly the same as it ever was, but if you've always sold exercise equipment for home or an IT setup for remote working, that's what you still do. But you may want to still address that you have a different market now, or talk about how you can deliver this safely, and just things that make sense. Understand your market, and if you don't know what they want, now's the time to ask them. Now's the time to check in on some current clients or past clients, ask them what they're doing or what they're not doing now. Have those conversations. This is something we've talked about a lot, isn't it, Rachel? Like having relationships with your customers and your suppliers and finding out what's happening in your market and just reflecting your marketing back to that. So I'm absolutely in the camp of, if you've still got something useful, please sell it to me. If you can solve any of my problems, I'm more than happy to buy. I'm still buying things, both on a personal level and on a business level. I'm still working with clients who are buying business services. And, there's still people who are starting businesses, growing businesses, and need help, whether it's, we've got someone who's been to the Broadroom, who is a management accountant. This is Sally, and her skill has always been in helping people get their cash flow together and do their forecasting and get their management accounts up to date. And so she's recognised that to apply for a lot of the business loans now, that's really important. That has to be in the application, and a lot of people aren't up to date with that as they would like to be, or aren't as accurate, or don't know how to do that. So that's just a renaming of a service that she already did, but just make it very specific to a problem that needs to be solved now.
Specific and relevant, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we said earlier in this conversation about an unprecedented event, and the businesses that are going to survive or possibly indeed thrive in the months to come are those that are being responsive. As in life, it's not what happens to us, it's how we can respond to it. But I also want to be really respectful when I say that, because I alluded to this change curve. And essentially, we have had a traumatic event in our lives occur, and there is this cycle that we've all gone through shock, denial, and then Eventually we come into an acceptance phase, and now we're starting to talk about this new normal, and we're going to come back to this towards the end of this session. But everybody's working at different paces as well, so I want to be really respectful and say, if within your business you just needed to take some time out, you know, small business owners, some of us needed to get introspective, we needed to get reflective. A very big difference I saw between those that rushed out and were able to sell immediately and, you know, represent, like what you're saying, Lucy, something that already existed. Others of us had to go dark for a bit, whether that's because we had family and personal things to sort out, or we had to sort out our teams. Perhaps we were going through furloughing, like sitting down to running the numbers. And maybe now is the time that you're getting your head above water and starting to think about selling again. There might have been a gap. That's okay too. It's all okay. However you've responded is all okay. There's no right, there's no wrong way. But the key message that we're talking about today is, you know, to get your business through it, to trade successfully through this crisis, especially, as Lucy said, for limited company directors, there's been a real gap in the access of financial help that we can have as grants. So now we've got the bounce back loans coming out. Not everybody feels comfortable with that, but we're going to chat about that. You need to look at how you as a business are going to carry on selling and what it is that you're going to sell. And the buying is the flip side about that, is also supporting other businesses in the transactions. So your supply chain and also the personal spend that you're making, it's all important. Why is it really important? Well, if you've been following with interest, as I certainly have, the daily briefings and all the different financial measures that the Chancellor has brought out, he keeps using this phrase bounce back, which is making some of us kind of either grimace or wryly smile. We don't think it's going to be, you know, a very quick bounce back. It's a nice phrase, but there's going to be a tough times ahead. That's undoubtedly true. And it's probably going to take time. And there might be a steep curve for many of us. What we actually definitely know for sure is, for the economy to recover, everybody needs to keep spending. People need to keep spending. Businesses need to keep selling. They need to keep trading. We need money to keep moving around through the system. And we need people to stay employed, which has been the whole point of the furlough scheme, to retain those jobs in the short term whilst, you know, the businesses get trading again. We need businesses to not go under, and we need, generally speaking, people to stay paying taxes, to stay off the benefit system as much as possible. That is how the economy will recover. So as small business owners, this is the responsibility that Lucy alluded to just 10 minutes ago. We're the backbone of the economy. Might not feel like it at the moment for those of you who might be a bit fed up and jaded with some of the ways the measures have been implemented, but we are, and we play a huge part in how this economy will bounce back. So we have to keep marketing, we have to keep showing up, and we have to keep selling. And ideally also, as Lucy's been saying, repositioning, thinking about your messaging, thinking about your marketing, so you're relevant and you're creating new offers to meet the emerging demands in line with these changing behaviours. One of the wonderful things I've seen, and I absolutely love, and I would say this because Lucy and I run the Broadroom together, it's a community, it's about connecting small business owners, it's about solving problems together, peer to peer. When you're a small business owner, it's very easy to get lonely and isolated in the day-to-day because you've got your head down, you're solving problems. In fact, you're actually only looking through your own lens. Larger companies have this huge advantage that they bring a board together of people with all the different skills. They share ideas, they fix problems together. So the whole point of the Broadroom that we run is to bring small business owners around a table and share skills and help each other to problem solve. I've seen amazing examples of that in the aftermath of this pandemic. There's been these Facebook groups popping up, massive communities of business owners joining forces to support one another. And out of that, we've seen collaborations, we've seen some partnerships, we've seen people helping one another. It's been amazing to see. So that's another really important thing I would challenge you on, I guess, as you watch this webinar. If you're going to carry on selling successfully and marketing, one of the best ways to do that is by being within a peer support community and getting collaborative support from other small businesses. It's really easy if you isolate yourself to kind of slide into feeling defeated, feeling despairing. We talked about going dark on the comms front. I know many of us who just have stopped doing our normal like email marketing or our normal social media campaigns because we felt lost for words. And as I'm at pains to say, that's okay. That's a normal human response. But now is the time to get into action. as you move through the chaos curve, the chaos bit, you moved into acceptance, we've got this new normal. What does that mean for your business? And small steps around marketing and selling every single day can make a massive difference. I mean, we should be selling every day anyway, shouldn't we, Lucy? And we haven't seen the big businesses stopping from marketing.
I'm just responding to a couple of the questions because it's a relevant point as well. We know that in some situations you just cannot sell what it is that you sell right now. So the example here is a travel company, and obviously, you can't book an overseas holiday now. Well, you can, but there's no insurance available, and people are very reluctant to. And all advice is saying don't do that. But that's a really good example. And I actually, when I was promoting us being on this today on LinkedIn, I mentioned, what the Festival of Enterprise are doing now. Now, the event was supposed to be this week originally, wasn't it? And, they can't run an in-person event at the moment for obvious reasons. But what they're doing is making sure they're still connecting with their audience, still providing relevant information and help, showing up. In most cases, I think you're probably building your audience, but even if you're just maintaining your audience or community or establishing or continuing that relationship, it's really important to keep marketing, because even if you can't sell now, you want to make sure your market is still engaged. So great examples from travel companies I've seen are just reminding me that they're there. They're like, we know, and acknowledging the situation, not pretending, just saying, this is the current advice. Some people are booking, some people aren't. These are the implications if you do or don't book early. I've seen examples of people saying, if you do and we have to move it again, this is what happens. Some people still want to have something to look forward to. And again, it's judging your audience. If you know your audience, take several holidays a year, you know that they've probably got the budget for that. They might be okay to put a deposit down for something happening in, a year's time, if there's some backup of it being able to be moved, or just engaging them with other things they could buy right now. So it might be, how to create this at home, or, how to buy a lovely hamper. Here's our villas in Tuscany, and we know you can't go, but how about this hamper of Italian food? We've partnered with this business that's offering that, and just reminding them that you're thinking of them is often enough, so that they will still come back to you when they're ready to book. Whereas if you go dark and you don't engage, or you don't just communicate about, you'll have your own frustrations as well. I'm sure you run a travel company because you love travel as well. So you're probably just as frustrated as them that you can't go on all your lovely, educational trips and learn about new destinations and go and visit them yourself. And you probably had a holiday booked for your family. So don't not engage on a personal level as well, and find some other ways just to keep involved. Now, I appreciate, like, cash flow wise, there's not necessarily much else you can sell, but there may be some people you can partner with that might have some, commission arrangements or affiliate agreements that you could be promoting their products, physical products and services that are available at the moment that you could make some money from. Just think around that, but always engage personally with your audience. They understand. I think one thing that's worth reminding you is, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but you can get away with a lot at the moment, in the sense that people are expecting things to be different. Under normal circumstances, if you suddenly said, oh, we can't offer our service this way anymore, or we're going to have to completely change the way we work, there might be a lot of resistance to that change. But because everyone has had change thrust upon them, you've actually got quite a license to go, okay, so here's how we've had to adapt, and here's what we're doing differently, and no one's going to be surprised.
And I think the beautiful thing about that as well is people love to see other people succeed. They do genuinely do. It's whole, rags to riches thing, which in literature terms is a really famous theme. When I've seen you talk loads of times in the Broadroom to people, helping them with their storytelling. And you've always said to them, Luce, don't be afraid of showing the human side to you. If this has been a struggle and the impact on your business, and you've had to change, and you've had to put really, maybe, like you say, quite drastic changes in place, tell the story behind that. Explain why you've done it and why it matters, and let your passion shine through for how you want your business to bounce back, so you can carry on helping people with all the things that are going to be important in the months and years to come.
Exactly. And people who are buying from you, you know, they're your tribe, they're your audience, they're your market. If you've done some good marketing up to now, if you've connected with them and they buy into you and your brand and your story, they don't want you to give up either. You know, we've got a great there's a guy called Mark Cribb who runs a podcast on the humans of hospitality, but he runs a group of local restaurants here, and he put out a video about what's happening, because before the furloughing was announced, you know, he just knew he was going to have to shut all of his businesses. And like most catering and seasonal businesses, you know, they run at a loss over the winter, and the start of Easter is when they start getting money back into their business. And he shot a video, and he cried at the end, and then I was crying, and then everyone was crying. But you know, and this is someone who wasn't afraid to be that personal. And yet, you know, as soon as the furloughing was announced, he sent that message out, and this was on social media, this was on email. You know, he was letting his customers know what was happening. And actually, just this week, they've announced that they've managed to open one of their venues to do drive-through takeaway. So you book in advance, you pay online, they give you a time slot, you turn up into their car park, into one of the numbered bays. They'll already have taken your money. They're going to come to your car, open the boot, put your food in, and you drive off. No one touches anyone, and it's brilliant. And
it's a wonderful example.
Even if people don't
really connect to that.
Yeah, and even if people don't use the service, the fact that they can see that they've gone away, they've got their heads together, they've worked out what resources do we have. You know, we've only got limited resources. A lot of people have been furloughed, so we can keep them for later in the season. You know, but we have got this core staff in one of their venues, and they've been able to do that. And he's taken us through his thinking and the problems and what's happened. And you know, I'm almost tempted to go and just book some fish and chips just because I want to give him some of my money.
I think that's really important as well. I mean, when we did our session about, you know, the legal side of things in the immediate aftermath, and we were looking about get your contracts out, work out what are you actually absolutely on the hook to pay, what can you change the payment terms of, and all of that. And we touched on that in there, and we said that loyalty and trust that had already been built up, many of us were like, oh, I really don't want to slash that spend, I'm going to keep that, you know, and or we reached out to them and said, okay, I understand you want to cancel, I'm going to keep in touch, and when the time is right, will you come back? You know, so keeping that conversation going, the trust, all the things that we talk about all year round in good business have become so relevant at this time. And I just think one of the most beautiful things to come out of everything, all the difficulty that we're seeing now, is a real move towards human connection, human storytelling, honesty in business, you know, taking off the facade and the iron mask that the corporate businesses, you know, sometimes put on. We as small businesses can do that beautifully, but as we've been talking about in the comments, it is about also overcoming fears and, you know, getting visible on social media and doing new ways of marketing. It's a big thing, isn't it? So before we move off it, I want to just make sure that we touch on the cash flow bit, because obviously for companies like, we just used the travel example, you know, shops, restaurants closed down completely, perhaps in the short term really struggling for any revenue, cash flow, massive issue. So over on our Broadroom page just a couple of days ago, we did like a quick list of 12, 14 things, didn't we, to say, get your head down, business owners, please, like, do your cash flow projections, see what your situation is, don't just put your head in the sand and let this situation happen. The Cybils loan scheme, bit difficult to access for many small businesses, but we've got the bounce back loan scheme coming out on Monday. Now, I know, and we all know, that many small business owners don't want to take out debt in the ordinary course of things. But if you go through everything in your business and you realise you're going to run out of cash in the short term, it might be your only option to survive. And, you know, we're not here to comment on the right or wrongs around the measures being put in place, but what we are here for is to help you as a small business owner to survive and trade through this crisis. So this fits in with the topic for today, because obviously the fastest and best way to create cash flow is always going to be selling more, to increasing your sales revenue and increasing your profit. You can also look at payment terms. So the way that you're selling at the moment, you can, you know, perhaps get customers to pay up front. You can get them to perhaps the opposite and spread the payments if they're struggling to pay, but at least you then have a predictable way of getting that cash flow into your business. So it's really sitting down and looking what your current revenue is, and if you're in one of the sectors of business that have been put down to virtually nothing at the moment, also making sure that you've checked all the things that you might be entitled to, the grants, we know that the JRS scheme and the SICE scheme, snappily called, have left grey areas for many business owners. But if that is the case for you and loan is the only option, then you've got to make that hard decision now around, are you going to go and access the loan, or actually are you going to cut your losses and close the business down because your personal liabilities are just too stressful for you? We're here to talk about, encouraging you to sell and find new ways of selling, but it won't be right necessarily for everybody. You have to make the personal decision that's right for you. We are moving into this, we've been calling it new normal, and it's a rough ride for many, and tough decisions are being made about how your business is needing to change. So under all the things we've been talking about today, some of those hard decisions might be saying no and letting go of offerings that aren't relevant, or ways of working that you're not going to be able to carry on with, even when the measures get released in the weeks and months to come. You might have to be saying goodbye to certain team members, letting go of suppliers, letting go of customers, obviously we've talked about. It's a time of transition, but this new normal, can have real opportunities as well. And I think putting your focus onto that as a business owner, as a small business owner, the faster you can put your business into a place of opportunity or poised for opportunity. So we've been talking about doing preparatory work as well. This is one of the, Lucy said, don't let Rachel get onto this, but this is why I've been lobbying really heavily, because company directors, they can access the furlough scheme, but currently it means that they can't work on their business, which, let's face it, is absolute nonsense. And it's in conflict to the self-employed scheme, where you can access a grant, but you can also carry on trading. So we have been lobbying really heavily to try and get that changed. But the fact is, sat here now today, company director of a limited company, if you furlough, you can't work. So most of us are with reduced revenues, but doing this preparatory work. And Luce, we touched upon, it looks like we have got time, but all the other things that you can do in your business as well, which are kind of non-revenue generating in the short term, but are brilliant for getting ready to going into a more active sales mode again.
Yeah, so, there's so much marketing that you can be doing. Even if you're not able to sell right now, there's so much in terms of getting your message right, getting everything up to date. Like I've said, surveying people, connecting with them, understanding and researching new markets and researching partnerships. That's often a way to get into a new market. If you've got to switch markets, we've talked about this a lot. The quickest and easiest way is to find someone who's already addressing that market that you can work with. You provide something complementary who can help you make the switch. It's also a time to increase your, education, whether that's, your professional education, so it allows you to sell more services or expand what you can do, or just your education around your business. So, is this the time that you master Facebook ads, or is this the time that you learn how to write great copy? Is it the time you learn how to present? Is it the time you learn how to create online courses? Obviously, that's a really obvious one that a lot of people have leapt to, and not every business lends itself to that. But for some of us, it's been the push. I've certainly spoken to a lot of people who, Rachel, you're alluding to it. Just review who your customers are. Which ones do you actually like working with? Which products and services do you actually like selling? Not just which ones are profitable. If you are going to have to make changes, and look at this from all levels. One of the clients I've spoken to this week, actually, he's someone who's run his martial arts online, and he's realized that, the way he'd structured his business with getting a lot of beginners in was actually not as enjoyable as when he works with his real kind of advanced clients and works on really, the higher level of mastery. And that's just been highlighted by the commitment shown by having to move things online. But that's allowed him to review how things are working in his whole business. I think it's really important that, it is very difficult if you're in a situation where you genuinely can't sell, and it is hard to get your mindset into, okay, where's my opportunity in this? What can I do? And, you know, our immediate thoughts do turn to cash, which is why we have brought cash flow into this. If there is nothing you can sell right now, then you have to park that and say, okay, am I going to borrow money for now? Am I going to just, you know, finance that cash flow? But how can I come out of this better? You know, how can I build a bigger audience so that when I can sell holidays again, or cars again, or whatever examples were on there, you know, can more people know about me? How can I connect with more people in the meantime? You know, can I start a referral scheme? Can people start introducing? Can I share some really great content, ideas? You know, partner with other people to bring great content. Even if you can't think of the content, there might be people that can bring it for you, but you just host it so people still know you as the host. You don't have to do all of the things. Often just acting as the host can really elevate you. Classic example, you know, David hasn't been able to get a word in edgeways yet today, but he's hosting us. The festival.
That's how it is. If you're gonna have dinner with two women, you have to accept that.
No, we haven't got out much. We haven't spoken to many people. You know, but you're hosting. You haven't had to do a lot of the content. You've gone out and thought, right, we're in a position where we can host all these experts. We can bring them in, but we're still getting our name out there at the same time as the experts being able to raise their profile as well. And maybe you can do that in what you're doing. And the benefit of that, hopefully, is when you pick the right people to partner with, they promote you to their audience, and your audiences start to mix. So where they have got people where it's relevant to both of you, if you're offering something complementary, then you've both just gained audience members, and you know, you've gone out there with that service attitude of, I honestly can't sell anything to you right now, but I still have knowledge, I still have connections, I still have ideas, and I still have things that I can tell you about, even if you can't buy from me. And guess where they're going to come the minute they can buy?
But actually, Liz, we've got a kind of a relevant question on that. So I'll just bring that into that exact point. So Chris is saying he runs a specialist, I'm sure you're a man, Chris, you might be a woman, a specialist construction company, long lead times from first inquiry to order, 1 month, 2 years, some case, lots of interest from potential customers. How can we keep this interest alive once we're back to normal? I mean, my first question would be, Chris, is there anything to stop you at the moment from holding deposits or continuing those discussions over the phone or virtually over Zoom and some, you know, to start? I'm guessing there's some sort of planning and design phase. You know, do you have to wait completely until things are back to normal? Obviously, you'll have to wait till the physical work starts, but I'm presuming there's things that could be, you know, working in the meantime. If you just drop your answer into that, and then we can talk through it a bit more.
Something on that, and we mentioned this in a previous webinar as well. I think people who can't sell right now, so restaurants and hairdressers and beauty salons, or you know, even holidays, obviously you have to go into the legalities of deposits and things on that. But if there's,
you sounded really boring when you said that. Legal stuff is really fun.
Sorry, Rach. I know. I just meant there's a lot more red tape involved with holidays than selling a voucher for a potential massage or something. Okay. But you know, if there are things that you know that are going to be in demand when you are allowed to open again, then you could kind of sell places in the queue. You know, if you're like, would you like to be, you know, one of the appointments in the first 2 weeks after we open? You know, buy your voucher now, and we'll put you in our priority list, and you can be first in there for the haircut or the massage, or you know, whatever service it is, or having the conversation or the on-site visit, or whatever it is people need to progress to that next stage in the sales process, or physically buy it. You know, buy the voucher to, you know, come and have the meal in the first month. We'll do a special offer, get some cash flow in now. And those are all things that you can legitimately sell. Obviously you tell the story, don't know when this is going to be, but what we will do is, as soon as we know when that's going to be, you've got first dibs. You know, you get the secret appointments that aren't going to be available to everyone else who hasn't bought a voucher, or the table bookings, or, you know, the products that we'll have. Yeah, so the house.
We've got some more information from Chris here. So he builds houses a bit like on Grand Designs.
Yeah,
fantastic. Right, we're all going to be ordering those from you, Chris.
So I think one thing Chris can do, I would just say, in terms of talking to people and keeping them interested, is sending them a series of case studies, sending them checklists of things they can be doing. You know, getting them as prepared as possible. So demonstrating your expertise, talking them through the process. This is how long things can take. Here are things you can be doing now to get ready. Here's some case studies we've worked on of similar projects to yours. This is how long different things took. This is where they had a hold up. Maybe if you want to go and research, you know, the types of bathrooms you want now, or roof tiles, or, you know, the landscaping you might need to do, or here's some things to look at online. Let's send people off to do research that, you know, often might hold up the sales process later on. Because if you can...
What I just loved about what you said as well, you're essentially helping them to visualize the end product during this time, and that's going to increase both curiosity and excitement in your buyer, Chris, but most importantly keeping you like first in the line, like in first line of sight. That's great. You always come up with great ideas for stuff like that, Lucy. But also, I guess, you know, coming back to that human to human connection is really keeping the conversation going, isn't it, between you, and being helpful, being proactive, so you stay first and foremost in their line. We've got another question from David on what's the view on pro bono offers, being mindful of clients' financial difficulties? How do you avoid being taken advantage of? This is massive for me, David, I have to say. So, you know, my background, as I've said, is legal. So in the first aftermath of the pandemic, when everyone was in chaos, Lucy and I ran a whole load of free webinars and seminars, and I helped loads of people for free. They had hardly any money, or they were worried about cash flow, to be more accurate. And it is a real fine line, I must say, because it's not my normal way of working. And when you're giving professional services or any type of consultancy or any service at all, obviously you don't want to devalue the service that you provide. But I very much took a view, and it's a personal decision. You know, the old adage around people might forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I could see that people in that chaos phase were really in pain and suffering. And my actual passion, my why I do what I do, why Lucy and I do the things we do together, is to help small businesses to succeed and stop them from failing. So I took both a subconscious and a conscious decision that I was going to, you know, let some of my invoices fall unpaid. I was going to offer payment plans, and I was going to do lots and lots of free stuff in those early weeks and months. Now that kind of sits contrary, doesn't it, to what we've been talking about today, about sell and move money through the economy. But that's because I took immediately quite a long-term view on my business, and felt that I know a lot of those people will remember the service that we provided at reduced cost, and will hopefully build trust and come back. But I do think it's a personal decision, and I'll let you pick this one up, Luce, because I know you have strong feelings about keeping your prices stable.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this conversation with a lot of clients as well, and I think, again, it is down to personal. I think most of us are on the side of we want to help more people than perhaps we can afford to, whether that's a time basis or, you know, we need to be earning as well. And I think my word I would use around this is boundaries. I would have some rules around it for myself. So if you feel you'll be able to offer free help, you know, put some boundaries around that. Say you're going to have an open office hours for 2 hours on a Friday morning. You're going to be in this Zoom room, or here's my number, or you know, send me a message on Facebook or whatever, and just make yourself available for a couple of hours. And anyone who's wants that free advice from you, you know, point them to that resource. Or say that you run, you know, 3 sessions a week, and here's the link to book those. Point them to resources that you've written. Or if you're getting the same question over and over, you know, record it as a video and make that available on your social media. Or, you know, email your past and current customers and say, look, I've been asked this a lot. I've put this little guide together, or this video together. You know, it can be an opportunity to just produce a new piece of content and collateral. It is personal. And I think, you know, I've certainly offered free help, but also without, you know, again, you don't want it to become profiteering. But if, you know, if you can also use it to your advantage as well, to create new content, to create collateral, like Rachel said, you know, the minute this started kicking off, and we actually, not that I'm saying we were there before you, lovely Festival of Enterprise, but we did run a whole series of live sessions a week or two before you guys started. Just because straight away we thought, oh, this was actually something Rachel and I had planned. We had a series of conversations we wanted to run as webinars, and we were going to run them at a nice leisurely sort of, you know, 1 every 3 weeks. And we had a number of topics that we suddenly went, oh my goodness, all these topics, now we're going to have to change them a bit, adapt them. address the uncertain situations that are here now, but we knew we could talk about all of them. We ran them over a week, and now they've become a resource on our website that people can go and download all the time. And there's 5 sessions of sort of 40 minutes each. There's like handouts that go with each of them, and guides and checklists and all sorts. But
Liz, let me just we've got a couple more questions. So let me just, I think that the final point as well on being not taken advantage of as well is just having those difficult conversations. Yeah, that's what I would say. It's always best to be honest in business. So if you have an amount that you want to charge, just be honest and say, I can do this for you, but it will cost this much. Are you able to pay? Maybe you'll give them payment terms. You might give them some flexible terms, but ultimately, you do need to keep trading and getting money into your business. So it's just being open and honest in the conversations around it, I would say. And we've got a question in from John, Lucy, where he's asking, how do we see business to business transactions compared to business consumer, which is absolutely right. We said at the start we were going to cover that, and we've kind of skipped over it. So I think it was the last session we did in the Festival of Enterprise, we talked about looking at not just David and Goliath and what the big businesses are doing and the small businesses are doing, but actually recognizing that we're all part of this really big, complex supply chain, and lots of businesses sell mainly to businesses and are reliant on trade coming from the larger businesses, or indeed trade passing through between the businesses in the same level. And it's had a massive impact. It's been huge. Cancellation of contracts, refunds, renegotiations. I never thought so many people would be interested to talk about force majeure clauses and the doctrine of frustration. It was like all eyes were on these contractual issues between businesses, and there's been fallout and there's been arguments, but there's also been lovely collaboration, renegotiation. I guess where we're sat at the moment is in this almost like a pause and a delay in lots of B2B transactions, which is what some of the government measures trying to fill in the gaps for. It's kind of like we've pressed pause and then hopefully they're going to get moving again. We were trying to encourage people not to terminate those business to business transactions, but instead renegotiate, be flexible and have them on hold. Comes back to the same theme that we've been talking about in all of our sessions, and again in this one, is about be open and honest, be proactive, communicate strongly, be flexible, be responsive, adapt, be open to different commercial solutions. Unfortunately, when it comes to bargaining power, us small businesses do often have less levers and less incentives to use. But there have been some instances actually where we've had increased leverage because we've had a product that a bigger business really needs at this time because it's essential to something they want to provide. So it's a kind of a hard question to answer, John. But that would be the overarching picture that we're all focusing on, to see B2B transactions as almost in a period of delay and pause. And as I say, the economy needs to get moving again, and it's going to be, we're looking at consumer activity, but the human instincts that we referred to also apply in the B2B transactions. This is going to be about trust, loyalty, honesty, commercial and collaborative approaches.
I will also just add to this, sometimes it's as simple as letting your customers know you're still relevant, or you can address their new problems. So if they're used to buying something from you, they may not realize that you can adapt to what they need now, because they might either just think that they need to stop buying from you, or go elsewhere to buy that. So the examples we've given, I've got people who are like marketing consultants and run agencies, and so rather than necessarily running the same kind of promotional campaigns, they're switching to managing more messaging campaigns and the things we've talked about connecting. It could be that moving online, how to work with that. I've seen a lot of coaches look at focusing on career transitions and people who've maybe been furloughed and are now having time to think about what they're doing. We've had lots of examples given to us of people who are actually selling the same thing. They've just had to remind
repackage,
or repackage to just let their customers know that they're still relevant. because their customers hadn't made the connection that, oh yeah, you do our management accounts, you can help us with the loan application. Oh yeah, you do our promotional marketing, you can help us with our kind of, crisis management marketing. Or, we've had examples from people who are like productivity mentors. Obviously that's now about, how am I effective working at home? It's what they've always sold. They just had to quickly remind their current customers that they're still relevant, and sometimes it's that simple. I know that sounds really daft, but often
some of the things in business are the most simple, aren't we? And that's why we love what we do in the Broadroom, because often as a business owner as well, you can't see what's right in front of you. You can't see past the end of your own nose. And we've seen so many wonderful peer-to-peer conversations, haven't we? When they're like, oh, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure, and they're like, duh, like obviously you need to do this. Sometimes the simplest things are what makes the difference. And I just was some great comments, talking about trust being the currency of business. It's so important, and I think we need to bring the session to a close soon, I guess, do we? And it would be really bad of us not to, in the context of thinking about selling, to really reinforce the fact that this is also about the whole customer journey. It's all very well selling something, but you've got to have confidence that you can deliver it properly, and confidence that it's going to be a high quality product, and confidence that when you take that money from that customer, that they're going to have a great experience with you. It's a bugbear of mine because, as I say, we've seen some people responding during the pandemic in an opportunistic way and selling stuff that actually they probably shouldn't have been selling, or maybe they didn't even have their supply chain properly linked. And we've also seen people that have been kind of then going out and talking about, oh, I'm getting these amazing results because I've just done X, Y, Z. And we know in the background there's loads of disgruntled customers or people complaining. So, we have to make that point when we're talking about buying and selling in a webinar like this. You have to stay in your zone of genius. You have to classic, core element of business is do what you're good at and do it really bloody well. And that's what will help customers to keep coming back, and that's what will help new customers to have that trust instantly built in the relationship with you.
And I just want to add something as well that I think is relevant, is if you are in a position to be one, be a buyer. Be a buyer of other people's services. Don't stop. We touched on it earlier. Don't stop your subscriptions or the businesses you're buying from as well. If you're in a position to continue to buy from them or find them some new buyers, if you know people in your network that could buy from some of the people you buy from, let's as small business owners try and do what we can and keep buying from each other as well, if we're in a position to do that. I think that's an important thing as well. It is the natural reaction to kind of close ranks and just look after yourself. But if you're in a position to be able to make referrals, recommendations, I mean, I've done some referrals this morning already, just from people that I know are selling relevant offers to people. I actually connected a career coach with someone who I know has just been made redundant. Why wouldn't I do that? I'm helping both of them. One of them gets to sell their service, and the other one, helps to be in a better position to move forward. But just even on a bigger business level, if you know you can be a great buyer, then do that too.
Oh, we've meandered all over the place, haven't we?
Advice for everyone. I think staying confident is important. I think everyone, obviously there's this perception that, it's distasteful or profiteering to be trying to push your business forward. But the reality is that, as Rachel alluded to, if the small and medium-sized businesses of the UK falter, then obviously we have, first order effects, companies closing, people losing their jobs, second order effects, extra burden on this taxpayer and the state, and then third order effects, mental health issues. So the whole system starts to crumble. So it's important that everyone is banding together here, and that you remain confident that your business is important to the UK, because it is, and that you should be pushing forward. So it's difficult at this time, but you got to keep doing it.
Getting the help you need, right? Like remembering, as I said, many small business owners end up lonely and isolated, just focusing on the task. I think it's a great time for us all to come together, to collaborate, that sense of community. I mean, that's what's going to move us as a nation through this anyway. It's been really interesting to see, even from a political perspective, maybe the cross-party working, slightly different behaviours there. Small business community.
Huh? Such an optimist.
I am an optimist.
You've got to be optimist.
We have to be, don't we? Otherwise, we're not going to get out of bed in the morning.
How do people connect with the Broadroom?
How do you
can we tell people how to connect with the Broadroom?
Sure.
So we have a website which is the Broadroom with an R in it, .co.uk. We have a Facebook page where we post up lots of ideas, and you can find both of us on LinkedIn as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that session this afternoon. Incredibly informative. I'm sure that everyone has lots of notes of thank you coming in, and yeah, people please reach out theboardroom.co.uk or on Facebook or equally on LinkedIn.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the brilliant engagement from the viewers as well. It's been really fun to do Q&A.
Okay, have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.